is Norwich Confidential with your hosts, Dr. Ben Hong, Bonnie Hong, and Mr. Bob Farwell. And good evening. I'm Bonnie Hong.
And good evening. I'm Ben Hong.
And we do have a guest this evening, and we will introduce her shortly. But I thought we'd talk a little bit about last week's show and climate change.
Oh yes, that's right. Well, before we do that, don't forget the Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather fight this Saturday. So if you haven't done a pay-per-view, you might want to just come over and...
Yeah, he's inviting you to come over if you don't have pay-per-view.
So we will have a pay-per-view viewing.
Party.
Anyways, it will be fun.
I did not know that that's what you talked about while I was late getting to the show last week.
Well, I told you that Pacquiao came from a hometown region, not exactly the same island, but same place. And we remember that in his first fight, because when he won that fight, they were really like having a huge celebration, and it was
I remember the billboards, yes.
Right.
But let's go back to climate change.
All right, good. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I know that we've been watching what's been happening, and I think that there was not just about climate change, but it's some good news also for my concern, which are the genetically modified organisms and foods. Vermont, actually, the Supreme Court in Vermont said that their state vote that all GMOs have to be labeled in Vermont was upheld by their Supreme Court, which I was really happy for. But of course, now Monsanto is appealing that decision of the Vermont Supreme Court, so they will be again entangled in more legal work. I'm telling you, they'll do anything to make sure we don't have information, Ben.
Well, Monsanto is a big corporation, and I'm sure that they will win everything. But the problem is this: that we really don't know what the consequences of these so-called GMO products, whether they be plants or animals. But they're
of
fish. Course, well, animals and fish. And they're doing that, and it will be all over the place, because one thing is that we are so overpopulated, and we have to make certain things that will be acceptable, and that basically will feed the entire population of this world.
But isn't that a misnomer, really? I mean, I've read reports that actually said that sustainable farming would produce just as much, and actually eliminate a lot of the pollution. And when you consider that apples grown in the state of Washington, before they get to us, are sent somewhere in Indonesia to be polished before they're sent back to us, when we have several orchards around we could buy our own apples locally from. Does that make sense?
Bonnie, that's called marketing. And that is no different than some countries when they pick mangoes, and they would basically pick the best ones and say export quality, and that's exactly the same, and it's all marketing. The thing is that when food resources becomes so heavily or so rare, or become so insufficient, that people and government would go in every direction they can to have this food on the table, and that GMO at this time right now would be the best solution. Where can you find a salmon that takes 2 years to grow, and so much feed, and that in 6 months with the genetic modified salmon you can make them grow to market size in 6 months at half the feed?
What happens when that genetically modified salmon gets out into...
Well, they became Frankenstein, and we know what happened to that. So basically, that is the secret to how Monsanto is going to really become an acceptable corporation. And so does the grain and corn and everything. Well, you've seen my picture of a cornfield last summer, where they had the corns are growing so green, but all the weeds around them are so dead because they have Roundups that killed all the weeds but did not kill the corn.
But you know, and that's another interesting thing, because Roundup has not been regulated. The one component in Roundup, even the United Nations report that came out just stated how it is a carcinogen, and so of course there was a big backlash in the United States for about 3 days, and then all of a sudden there's no more word about Roundup, and it's absolutely amazing.
Well, that is for future generations. It's no different than the asbestos. When they already know that it's going to cause cancer, or tobacco smoking, it can cause cancer, or breast implant for that matter. And people at that time were saying, oh, well, let the future generations
Worry about it
worry
and pay
about
for
that.
it.
So basically Dow have to go under bankruptcy because of the asbestos lawsuit. So I can see that the future, if there's going to be indeed some harmful effect of this GMO things, that Monsanto is going to be probably in the lawsuit recipient. But then that's for future generations.
Being closer to the future, though, you know, that it has been projected that because of the droughts in California, they also see the climate patterns changing drastically. And most people in even our generation don't even remember, except in pictures in history books, of the Great Dust Bowl in what is now our the food basket of the world in the middle of the United States.
Well, the Great Dust Bowl and climate change are two different things. The Great Dust Bowl happened because of the failure of the crops and the farmers to rotate. At that time, science was still not that great. And so they created such a dust bowl because of the same crops that were planted over and over. But this time, it's a climate change. Now, climate change is a world event that happens because the world is not of the same climate as it used to. So everything that depends on a constant and stable climate obviously will have to die, and will have to change. And in the future, things, maybe something will come out of it. So comes Monsanto, and they will have a drought-resistant
Yes, but there won't be any
corn
people left.
and so on. Well, that's the other thing too, because like Stephen Hawking said, that it's not the change, or maybe there's a climate change, but there are a lot of factors that will kill the humanity within 1,000 years. And he says that he doubts if humanity will survive in another 1,000 years. And it has a lot to do with the aggressiveness of the humanity, and well, maybe we are killing ourselves. So if Monsanto is not going to kill us, we are going to kill ourselves.
Something else will?
In any case,
the climate will?
It's just one of those many things that are happening. And yes, you talked about the huge methane deposit that will probably be the so-called fatal blow to the earth when those methane gas does escape.
Right.
And it will literally change the entire climate. And at the same time, if the volcanoes or the earthquake doesn't do it, then I'm sure there's something else that will do.
I think this is our guest. Do
Yes.
you mind if I take the call to find out if she needs some help?
All right, sure.
And
In the meantime, I will...
you can keep
sure.
talking about climate change?
Yeah, we did go for a rally on
Hi,
climate
Lindsay.
change, and this happened last fall in New York City, and it was really amazing for the simple reason that I didn't realize how well known this is, because when we went for the rally, there were people from all over the world that were there, and also people from all over the United States that were there. And these are not, super wealthy people or well-to-do. These are literally just regular people who really are very concerned about what is happening. And also there were scientists from MITs or all the other colleges that really were there also to participate in the rally. And of course, there were also different ages, from young kids to grandmothers of 80 and 90 years old that were there, and it was literally kind of a opening.
But it was impressive to find so many people that were actually knowledgeable.
Of very varied background that were committed to one issue, and that was the climate change.
Right.
And that is the first time that I've been to a rally that showed solidarity in one or a single issue. Because in every rally that we've been to, most of these rallies are hijacked by some other issues that some people want to do, and so on. And before you know it, this is a whole mass of people and parading with different issues and different agendas
that they want to bring to
that
the
they
forefront.
want to bring to the forefront. But this is one issue that I think people were so solidly behind it. And so I think they are going to have another rally when the weather is improved, and we'll keep you posted. And next time we come up here, here, I will show you some pictures, and they're really fun and to watch, because it just shows you that people are really concerned about it. On the other hand, I'm still having my position that says that 1% of the population that has all the money in the world, they could very well use that money to fund all this green technology
Easily.
and research,
Right.
and hopefully it will change the world. But are we in a point of no return? I'm not sure. But when you really go out there and look out what is happening in our oceans, what's all these dumps that are being used for disposal of chemicals and so on, you'll be kind of amazed that maybe we're in the point of no return, and that no matter what we do, we cannot really reverse or bring back what we used to do or what we used to have in the past. Now, but I hope it's not gone, as far as I'm concerned, because I've been to places where water is so dirty that you would not want to put your foot into the water.
I know.
But and of course, here in the United States, there were some few places that I would not put my foot into the water. But if you look at the water, there's clean water everywhere that you can come over and see. There's clean atmosphere, this clean air, and so there is a big change. It just means that if we have to do something, we can do it.
Don't you think it takes a national strategy, though, to do it? You have to have a real commitment. I think the people absolutely would be solidly behind a national policy, but they're not doing that.
Well, and that is where our leadership in government is failing us, because our leadership is not taking the leadership. And unless there is some money to be made by some corporation, that's how our policy functions. If there is war against the polluters and we go out and shoot them, then maybe we can have our government.
Have our government back? I don't. No,
we will have a militarized industrial complex that will arm our government people to shoot the polluters, but unfortunately there's none. So
not when the polluters are hiring the senators and congressmen as soon as they leave office to become lobbyists for them. So you're not going to, that war is a non-existent.
Well, it hopefully is going to change once we realize that we all live in the same planet, we breathe the same air, and whether you are the 1% or the 99%, hey, you're on the same
We're all in the
world.
same boat.
And we're hurling in space at the speed of light, probably, that towards the black hole. So,
yes.
Hey, guess what?
Well, I think that all kind of leads us to why we invited this guest here tonight, because everything that we've been just saying kind of shows that we are not really totally represented.
And this is where we want to do, because we're not just talking about something, we are not just talking about some issues, bringing it to your attention. We would like to be part of the solution, or at least some idea as part of the solution, because we can be here forever talking about what's going on. Well, what good is that? I mean, you will all get bored one day and just say, oh yeah, the same rant and rave and so on.
Right.
But we would like to present to you some ideas. But before we can present to you some ideas, we have to understand what the problem is that is giving us this roadblock and all the factors that will prevent things from happening. Because once we identify all these roadblocks and who is behind them, well, maybe the people can rally behind and say, hey, look, this is our way to clean air, this is our way to clean water, and this is our way to prevent pollution. So let us all be one and have our government work on this. So I think your guests will be able to tell us actually what the roadblocks are.
Right. But I think most of us really actually know that it's part of it is obviously they want to say it's money, but it's actually it's much deeper than that. It's not just money in politics. It is a deeper it is a much deeper issue than that. For example, I think that when you take how we vote, how represented are we? We kind of know that, yes, the politicians will heavily fund the candidates that they want, but even before you get to the point where you have the candidates we're going to vote for, there's a whole primary system. We don't really participate fully in a primary system. And even those candidates are mostly elected by, again, a very few number of people. So when it comes to election day in November, you have candidates that have already been picked out. You have candidates that have already been fully funded, heavily funded, and then they say, okay, we do have the right to vote, and we can go in and elect the people that we want. Well, that becomes a real issue and a problem, because once you have a limited choice, when the choice is not real, are we really going to be represented? So I think that it's more than just money. At this point in time, we have much larger issues than that. So I think that there is a way to look at other solutions. If we were able to really elect people that we know represent us in Washington, and we do have people in Washington that absolutely do represent us. Bernie Sanders from Vermont, Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, Senator Sherrod Brown, Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut. Again, these are representatives that have gone out against very often what the party politic has said should be the policies. And right now, even you have an awful lot of Democrats, Republicans, and liberals, Tea Partiers, all of whom are basically opposed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That is the trade agreement that is classified as NAFTA on steroids and is just plain classified. It's one, the agreement is one that even our elected representatives and congressmen can't get to read. And if it weren't for WikiLeaks, we would probably still have a lot of difficulty in getting any information at all about it. So I think that kind of all goes back to one of our very first shows about what is news, how do we view the news, where do we get it, and how much of the news are we not getting. So I really encourage you to look at issues that that you will find on stations other than ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and even Fox News. When you look at the history, not one of those stations have had even one newscast on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Not one. You've had one television broadcast on PBS, one. There was a recent article in one of the primary media newspapers, and it was amazing because that whole article was why the TPP would be so good, and it was a story that they said was leaked from a secret source out of the White House, a knowledgeable source out of the White House, an unnamed source out of the White House. So that whole article was basically leaked in order for them to get their side of the TPP out. But at any rate, one of the things that we have to do, I think, is really look at who represents us. And we are very, very lucky this evening to have as our guest Lindsay Kahn.
Yeah.
Lindsay, it's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Thank
you,
you
too.
so much for joining us this evening.
Of course.
Lindsay is the
Chapter
leader
Yeah.
of Represent Us Eastern Connecticut. So do you want to talk about first just what Represent Us is and
Yes.
how you became a chapter leader for Eastern Connecticut?
How I became, well, first of all, Represent Us is a national nonpartisan campaign that works to reduce the influence of money in politics by passing the American Anti-Corruption Act. I ended up I was involved with this. I'm a student at Eastern, I'm a social work student, and I was in a policy class, and we'd watched Robert Reich's Inequality for All.
Wonderful.
So that just got me all fired up. I went home, honestly, went on his website, saw Represent Us, and signed up to lead a chapter.
Very good.
Yeah, and so here I am.
Represent Us has been doing quite a bit. I think when I first recognized Represent Us was with the Honest Politician ads with Gil Fulbright.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
If you've missed any of the Gil Fulbright Honest Politician ads, just Google him. I mean, they
Yeah.
were absolutely wonderful.
YouTube, Represent Us has a channel on YouTube, and they have like all of them right there.
All of his ads.
Yeah.
I think my favorite, and I was very surprised when I saw it, that's what made me an absolute fan, was the one ad where the politicians were encouraged to all wear sponsor jackets like the NASCAR drivers.
Yeah.
Because I had said that a while ago, and I thought, oh my God, there's somebody that, there's a
Gets
like
it.
mind.
Yeah.
So, but those were wonderful. So that was one of your first campaigns with Represent Us.
Yeah.
The most important campaign, though, I think Represent Us has had is the Anti-Corruption Act. You want to tell us about Tallahassee being
Yeah,
the first
Tallahassee,
city?
Florida, actually, they just were the first city to actually pass a legally binding act, to enforce that. I am actually working with the mayor of Wyndham, Ernest Eldridge, to try to pass a resolution over the summer. So I'm really excited about that.
Yes, because unfortunately, the Anti-Corruption Act, to make it a law, can only be done in states where you can have a citizens' initiative, a ballot initiative.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Connecticut does not have a ballot initiative. But resolutions are possible. And explain to us what part of the Anti-Corruption Act is. What are some of the...
Well, it works to stop, Congress taking money from the interests that they're supposed to be regulating. Because obviously, if you're supposed to be protecting the environment, but, ExxonMobil gives you $1 billion, well, obviously that's not
I
gonna
thought
work
one
out
of
like
the real teeth in that bill was the fact that if they sat on a committee and they have taken more than $5,000 from that company, they have to excuse themselves and not be able to vote.
that. Yeah.
I thought that is a brilliant idea.
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how it should work. I mean, a Princeton study just came out that analyzed 20 years worth of policy data, and they found that while the government does represent economic elites and big corporations, the average American citizen, basically has statistically no influence in public policy.
None.
And it's just, it's mind-blowing. It really is.
You have small children, right?
I have a daughter, yeah, she's 7.
She's 7.
Yeah, she played tug of war with the mayor on Representation Day.
Very good.
Yeah.
That was the next, we'll come back to the Anti-Corruption Act,
Okay.
but you did a whole campaign for Representation Day for April 15th.
Yeah, so we chose tax day because taxation without representation, and we participated with about 30 chapters all across the nation, just, showing that we're out there and showing, that this isn't okay with us, and, we're going to work to, get this passed and get this done and change it. I think a lot of people, based on that study, I mean, obviously it's understandable why people would think that, they don't make a difference in things, but it's not true. And if we all come together little by little, then we can make big change.
I think that what happens very often, it was probably in your parents' generation, that we had Vietnam. What do you know how the protests were? Did you, besides in school?
Not really, no, not besides school.
Really?
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of what happens. They tell us that our democracy is only as safe as the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And when people forget how to protest, when people forget how to fight for democracy,
Yeah.
and how to fight to be represented, I think that becomes a real danger to our democracy.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I feel the same way. If you asked me a year ago if I would be doing this, what are you talking about? But, I think once you start learning about how things actually really work and how they really are and how it affects you, I mean, you can't not, Like some people say to me, oh, Lindsay, you put all this time into it, you don't make any money. I'm like, I don't care, because if I don't try, then who's going to, and then how's change going to happen?
How many students at Eastern do you think are involved or aware of some of the issues?
It's funny because in my research class we did a research study on that, just assessing their views and if they feel that corruption's an issue. And I had an open-ended.
Just speak up a little.
I had an open-ended question about what issues do you think affect you, and I asked is government corruption an issue, and one person didn't know what that meant. And I'm like, oh, but the great thing was she was really excited and she wanted to get involved, and I told her about Represent Us, and she's like, I would love to learn and I want to be. So I think it's just educating people, and then just kind of showing them the way. Because at first, even I was like, how am I going to do this? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not smart enough. I don't know how to run a campaign. And then you just do it. And then it just, it doesn't matter as long as you're doing something. It's just a great feeling, really.
I think that's how I actually began in.
Really?
I decided that there was something that was wrong,
Yeah.
and you just take the first step, and
Yeah.
then you find other people that are also taking one little step, and it's amazing how it's kind of like, I shouldn't make the analogy of the rotary wheel, but it's very similar to that. One part of the spoke makes the whole thing turn, and it grows and gets stronger.
That's the great thing about Represent Us too, is that they're very supportive. If I have a question, I can call them right now and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, what do I do? You have tons of resources online. It doesn't take that much time. You could just, participate online by sharing petitions and information on Facebook just to spread the word.
Yeah.
So if we each do a little.
During the tax day, the Represent Day, on April 15th, you said you were up in Wyndham.
Yep.
I noticed there was another one down in New London. Wasn't there another
I think
group
that
in
was
New London?
the Fight for 15.
Because I saw, oh, maybe it was, I don't know.
Because I know in Hartford they had a big thing that night too.
There were several groups that all decided that, yes,
Yeah.
April 15th is a good day to
Yes.
kind of get together.
Yeah.
One of the amazing things to me about Tallahassee being the first city in the United States to pass the anti-corruption law was the fact that it was a absolute meshing of Tea Party people, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives and progressives,
Yeah.
that all came together. very much like what Ben was saying a little earlier about the climate change march in Washington. There were a number of different groups, but and they were looking at climate change from a different perspective, whether it was for the food that we wouldn't have because of the drought, or the air we're not going to be able to breathe, or just the floods that will kill us.
Earthquakes and
all of them came together. And in Tallahassee, that was pretty remarkable to have Tea Party people working with progressives.
Yeah, no, that's the great thing about it, though, is that everybody has an issue that they care about. And you know how I feel is, you know, it doesn't matter if we differ in opinion, but ultimately nothing is going to get done until you get money out of politics. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So it's great to see that, you know, people on all sides can realize that and work together, you know, to, you know, get this out of here.
And the anti-corruption law actually criminalizes corruption in politics. It's not just
Slap on the wrist.
they're not just simple words or rhetoric. They're actual laws with teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, to me, when you actually read the act, it's every single city every state should pass this.
Absolutely. And it's very
I
comprehensive, and it covers, you know, all the bases.
The lobbyists,
It's crazy.
the swinging door, the revolving door between Congress and the corporations.
And the corporations and their family members, and it's just like this never-ending pattern that it's just, when you really look at it, it's, how is it even happening? I mean, it just blows my mind, really. When I read the news or I hear something, I'm like, how is this happening? It's just so, you know, it makes me so mad.
Good. I want you to stay mad. That's really good. Part of what you need to actually have this passed is, as I said before, having in states with a ballot initiative, it's going to be much, much easier because you just get 10,000 signatures and you can get it on a ballot, and you know, you can then have everybody vote, and you really that's real democracy.
Absolutely.
You know, in Connecticut, I was actually surprised because when this first came out, I did look at what would it take.
Yeah.
And when I realized there was, we did not have a ballot initiative, that it's not something that's easily done within a city. In the city, in Norwich, for example, it would take an ordinance. But prior to having an ordinance written, we could have a resolution.
Yeah.
And one of the absolute, if you're listening to us from one of the surrounding towns, I think that if you go to the representus.com, they have a section there that talks about how to pass a local anti-corruption law, the act. But then they also let you know if you live in a state that does not have a ballot initiative, that you actually can just have
The resolution.
a resolution done.
And it's so easy to do. I mean, it's just all right there in front of you.
They
And-
give you the sample resolution. They did make it easy. But even the whole act is provided
Yeah.
online, so you can download it and read it. But even more simpler than even this one was the explanation. They have it, is this constitutional? And that whole section, would you like to talk a little bit about that, about the section of is it constitutional? Because that really explained every single section.
Yeah. Because when we're out and about and we're petitioning, people are always like, well, what about, you know, Common Cause or all these other organizations that are working to overturn Citizens United? And, you know, that's great, and we support them and they support us. But realistically, overturning Citizens United might take a little bit longer.
But it only covers a small bit of what is in this
Yeah,
act.
I mean, basically the donations. But this, you know, covers everything, and it goes around that, so it is constitutional, and, you know, it's something that we really need to do.
The things that are in the act that are not covered by just the donations, I think were even more important. Having our legislators not be able, they have to excuse themselves from votes.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of a representative, you know,
I know.
would we have if he was excusing himself on 15 votes on 15 issues because those 15 corporations
Yeah.
have just paid him so much money?
We learn really quick.
We would learn they wouldn't
be like
have
the
to have the
jacket.
jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's better than the jacket.
Yeah.
They can't influence the vote as well,
Right. I mean,
or influence law that way.
yeah.
So that was only one part. I mean, Citizens United isn't going to handle that.
No,
It's not going to handle the lobbyists.
that's absolutely not. It's not, I mean, they shouldn't, you know, I just feel like it's common sense.
Talk a little
And
bit
that's
to
why-
to our audience about what the lobbyists, the impact lobbyists could have.
Well, I mean, if you look at just, you know, student loan debt, and these kids are coming out of college with, you know, at least $30,000 right from the start, and then you have, you know, people like Senator Warren who's trying to, you know, help out and lower interest rates, but then you have the bank who spends all this money on lobbyists to influence that policy, and therefore it doesn't get passed. I mean, regular students don't have, you know, millions of dollars to buy lobbyists to go, you know, try to block or pass these bills.
And as you just said, from the Princeton study and your own research study,
Yeah.
it's the corporations that have the influence. So we may not have the lobbyists, but most of us want to think, no, but I have my congressman,
Yeah.
I have my senator,
Yeah. But
you know, I mean, I can go to them. It was,
yeah, and then I mean, you were talking about the TTP earlier when I came in, and it's just like amazing to me because if it's such a great deal and it does so many wonderful things for us, why can't we see it? And even members of Congress can't see it. So, I mean, yeah, that's just common sense too. I mean, it just blows my mind. And then to fast track it, and then you can't do anything about it, and that's what it is. And
they can only
That's-
vote it up or down.
up or down, and then you can't make amendments, and it's just not okay. It's just not.
And I think when we first talked about it, one of our first shows was about the Trans-Pacific Partnership back in January.
Yeah.
And again, the only reason that most of us even know about some of the chapters in the TPP is simply because of WikiLeaks.
Yeah,
And then yet the government goes after
of course.
the people that are leaking information.
Yeah.
Because that is our only real source of information.
Yeah.
Again, as I said, you know, you don't see anything on ABC, NBC, CBS,
No.
CNN,
Of course not.
even Fox News.
Yeah.
None of them will say anything about it.
But they'll cover Ebola for a month.
Exactly.
It's like, makes you wonder, you know, but they passed the budget bill during that whole thing, and,
While they were talking
you know,
about,
that's not productive either.
Right.
You know, Citibank wrote part of it. I mean, how is that representative of a democracy when you have banks writing your bills? It's just,
and in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it's even worse.
yeah.
I mean, you have 12 countries. That's 40% of the entire global economy. 40%. And who wrote most of these bills? Most of the chapters in the TPP. So, I mean, there is a real problem with that. And again, this is another issue that both conservatives and progressives, are liberals and libertarians,
Right.
are all talking about. They're all opposed to it.
Yeah.
I mean, fast track by itself
It's just wrong.
what fast track actually means is that they give the president the right to quickly get this deal agreed to, and then it can be sent to Congress after the deal is already made.
Yeah.
It is then sent to Congress, and Congress can only vote for it or against it. They are not allowed to make any amendments or have any input into this contract at all. And the real problem with that is that you've got things in that contract right now. Let me tell you what it's called. It's an investor-state dispute settlement, the ISDS. This is a small group of very highly paid corporate lawyers So you'd have a group of 3 lawyers that would decide that, well, those laws in the United States that protect the food system, they want all these inspections, that's really costing us too much money, so since we can't trade with you, you're going to have to pay us. Huge amounts of money. That leaves us vulnerable to over 9,000 corporations in that 40% of the world's economy that would then decide every time we wanted to protect our water, our air, our food, we would be out of luck and we would have to pay, again, corporations huge amounts of money. This is part of what not just TPP is, but these
The
are
influence
existing.
of
These
money in
already
politics.
exist.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the tobacco companies that have sued Australia and using this kind of a,
Yeah, when we spoke, I ended up looking it up. I'm like, that can't be right. Like, they can't, and then who pays, if this were to be passed and like another country sued us, then the taxpayers are the ones who are going to be paying for it.
right.
How is that beneficial? It doesn't make sense to me.
And just saying that the TPP is like NAFTA on steroids.
Yeah, you heard that.
And when you look, I'm still waiting to get a phone call back from our Connecticut State Labor Department, because I was hoping we could have the commissioner come in, because we know how NAFTA affected Connecticut's economy, how many companies we've lost.
Yeah, there's actually a website where you can look at how it'll affect each state that you're in.
How
TPP will affect it.
Yes. And yet that information doesn't seem to bother anyone, but maybe those of us that have to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that you wouldn't be able to promote local business. I mean, how is
that
that
outrageous?
good for anybody? Like,
But it doesn't give us the right to sue them
Yeah.
by not promoting
You can't
our own.
promote your local business, so all the corporations will make all the money, they'll go out of business, but that's good for the world, that's good for America, and the other countries. You know, it's like, and that's why I really think that it's important that people come together and they realize that it doesn't take a lot, it really doesn't. If you take, like, I have a separate email account just for petition signing, and I just take 5 minutes out of my day, find the petitions that I care about, and sign them. And, it's small, but, if 1 million people did that, and then you come together and it makes a difference.
Did you at one point think you might be signing too many petitions?
Sometimes I get confused if I've already signed one that I'm signing, so maybe.
Because I think that for many people, they think, well, if I've signed, I'm already supporting this issue. I don't have to support that issue.
Yeah, that is a good point.
But what really happens is because the issues are really connected in a number of ways. And at the root of almost every one of these issues is the corruption that exists. We would not be signing this many petitions for this many issues if we were really represented. So when I look at and I begin to feel like I think I've maybe signed, I'm signing too many petitions.
Yeah.
I take another look at what they are,
Yeah.
and I realize there's not
What's behind
there's not one issue that is less important. There are some that, yes, are more critical, but not less important. Like, for example, when we talk about climate change, it is critical.
Yeah.
But why don't we have a national energy policy that is directing our economy into solar and wind and encouraging inventive entrepreneurs to come up with other solutions? It's really easy to figure out.
Koch brothers.
Pardon?
I said I would say Koch brothers.
That
could be a reason.
Again, there's the money behind it.
Yeah.
Even when all of America knows that we should not have been dependent on foreign oil, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Now that climate change is at a critical point,
I think I just read in the bill that, the EPA's budget just got cut by, I want to say $60 million. And, how is that
helpful.
helpful? I mean, if we don't have a planet that has clean water and clean air, then we don't exist.
Or a temperature
So
that we
then-
can survive in?
Yes. Then, so all your other, all the other agendas that certain people are pushing, well, that's not going to matter anymore because we won't be here.
And behind all of them, though, again, whether it's a critical issue,
Yeah.
and as I said, they're all important, at least the ones I'm signing for.
Yes.
I feel like those are
Yes,
very
I
important.
do.
But there are some that are critical, like climate change. The root problem behind all of it is that we're not being represented. It is the money behind and how the money works. It's not just that you can take money out of campaign donations, as in Citizens United. That's not going to stop the influence.
lobbyists, yeah.
Right. And if somebody does give more than that amount of money, I would love to see that part of the Anti-Corruption Act,
Yeah.
because if nothing else works, that would.
Yeah, there needs to be full transparency on what's going on. I mean, it's not okay for just like the 1% to be influencing, a billion people's lives. It's just not.
So you also have a website. I think we've put up your website on screen a couple of times. You're on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. It's Represent Eastern CT.
Yep, Represent Eastern CT. We have it up there. I really would encourage you to go on the site. If you really understand where the corruption is coming from and know that there is something we can do, I will have a resolution. Actually, by Friday, I will have the resolution written up for
you do it for
Norwich.
Awesome.
So I would love to see if there are other citizens of Norwich, voters of Norwich, that would maybe like to join me in trying to take our step toward doing one little thing
Yeah.
to get rid of the corruption that is currently in our government. This doesn't mean that I think that there is something corrupt in the government in Norwich. What it shows is that at least the citizens of our communities are saying we will not put up with it.
Right.
And it's saying that our city will not put up with it.
Yeah, and the
And
goals are
if we can get enough cities, you
Yes.
work in it's in
Windhoek.
Windhoek.
Yeah, but I'm going to be trying in Waterford and New London as well.
Very good.
This summer, yeah.
And I think once we have a number of cities in Connecticut,
Yeah.
it will force the representatives to pass it in the state.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the goal, isn't
Yeah,
it? For
that's the goal.
50 states that will do it.
And I mean, if you look at, marijuana and gay marriage, that's how that started.
Right.
So small movements and people working together and coming together do make a difference, and you can make change.
And it doesn't have to take 20 years.
No.
I mean, marijuana did take, took
A while
lot-
back, yeah.
took more like 50 years. I mean, it was, oh yes, I was saying 50 years ago, when I was only 20, that it should have been legalized. So, yes, it took,
Yeah. Well, I think the majority of Americans are on board with getting money into politics.
yes.
So it's like you don't have
But
this.
it's more than just having them on board.
Yeah, they need to do something.
You have to do something.
Yes.
So this is one solution, because it does affect, no matter what the issue is that you're concerned about, it is affecting it.
That's what I learned. I was very big into like environmental and GMO and Monsanto, and then I'm like, well, wait a minute. This issue actually can't be solved without this issue, and then you start seeing like, wow, we can't really get anything done unless we get this done. So
Monsanto was a big issue for you. Yes. You must be happy about the law that just passed in Vermont.
yeah,
the
I
Supreme
love
Court.
Vermont. Vermont is great.
Well, they're
Bernie
contesting it.
Of course they
will
are.
appeal it because
Yes.
it's a disaster for them. We know that for Monsanto, they worked extremely hard in Oregon to make sure it did not get passed.
Yeah.
I've never seen more money poured in by a company into one.
That just tells you right there, you don't even, in my opinion, you don't even need the research. If they're going to take, use all their resources to fight that, then obviously you're not doing something right.
And they're appealing.
You're hiding something.
Right, but they're also appealing the laws in the state of Hawaii. We love Hawaii. It's one of our favorite states, and Hawaii is very careful about what it lets onto that island because it's a small
Yeah,
microscope
spread.
of an environment. It's And so they're very careful, and they have been very careful about the GMOs and what they would allow, what pesticides, and now they're appealing every single law that was passed in Ohio. But in Oregon, to watch what they did there was just, to me, it was amazing.
Yeah, just the farmers and just everything. When I watch the documentaries and you hear these people and you see their story, it's just like heartbreaking. They're just trying to live, and then you have GMOs, which, apparently there's not enough evidence to suggest that they're bad, but I feel that there is if you look at the correct studies. And it's scary because it's our children, it's the future of our planet.
But even without the evidence, the fact that we can't know.
Yeah, that is the...
And again, when you start having, when you have no transparency,
Right.
when you're not allowed to have the information, something is wrong.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, and then I don't know if this is recent, but I remember from when I was a little bit younger, they were complaining about, labeling, and that would cost money. And, okay, but you can label, no artificial sugar.
Right. Okay,
but just putting a little GMO sticker is going to cost all this money. It just makes no sense.
Right. We have about just a little under 10 minutes left. Our hour flies by.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine trying to put some of this information into a half-hour program, but what are some issues that, or points that you think are particularly important for us to get across to begin to have the public really understand what you're trying to do?
I think it's like what we said before with the study, how we have no say in our public policies, and we're supposed to be in a democracy, and we're not being represented whatsoever, and corporations and economic elites are. There's just something wrong there. And their interests don't align with the majority of Americans, so the policies that are affecting all of us are not, like they just cut 93 million from WIC.
Yeah.
People need that. You need it. So we need to, come together and work on this issue so we can be represented, and the things that we all care about, we can have policies that reflect that and help us.
You talked about the fact that many of these agencies have been cut to the bone, where there's nothing there. I was amazed that the U.S. Forest Service, there were 2 petitions this past week for the U.S. Forest Service. One was because there's a move by Acre Oil in Colorado to go into the pristine, there's not a single road in that national forest, and to go in and do coal mining. 19,000 acres.
Wow.
This was for the permit for them. This is the 2nd largest coal company in the United States, apparently. And so the petition was to try to prevent them from getting that permit. The second petition was, that the Nestle Corporation is using incredible amounts of water in drought-stricken California, where everybody is on water rationing.
Yes.
And yet Nestle continues to just use all this water.
And get away with it.
And they have not had, they've had an expired permit since 1988. When they were asked about that permit, they said, well, we have been understaffed, so we haven't been able to, our permit office is so understaffed. And then I'm thinking, you're so understaffed, but you're ready to set a permit in your permit office that is so understaffed to make sure that Acre Oil gets 19,000 acres to do coal mining in.
Exactly.
So it's not that they're understaffed.
Yeah.
It's where the priorities are.
Right.
And I think that, again, both of those issues were important, because the more coal we're mining, obviously our climate is going to, again, be immediately affected. But there is good news.
Yeah.
there's still a lot of good news. You have more and more cities coming on board with Represent Us every week.
Yeah, I think on the 15th, I think we had like 8 more chapters sign up. And then we also do the college chapters. That's, I did the Represent Eastern CT. I had trouble getting a team together, so my professor actually made it part of our community organizing class, which I think actually more colleges should do. If you have to do a project anyways, why not use this? What a great way to, you know, educate students, and you learn so much in such a short amount of time, and you make change. I mean, we set our goal at 400 signatures, and we have 437, including state representatives, the mayor, and councilmen. So
That's wonderful.
yeah,
That's
we were
great.
pretty excited about that.
Yes, and I know there are over 500,000 members of Represent Us now.
Yeah, we're working
So-
for 1 million.
I think that's great. Well, I really appreciate your coming in. I know that this was a hectic day for you between school and your sick daughter.
Yeah.
But,
Thank you for having me.
no, I think it's our pleasure. And do look for the resolution that I'm hoping by Friday I will have finished for, I will need support to bring it before the City Council, obviously. But it is one step, just one step, and it's a simple thing I think all of us can get behind and do. It doesn't matter whether you're a conservative, a liberal, a Democrat, a Republican, a libertarian, a Tea Partier. You can't get a single thing done if your voice isn't being heard. As long as there is corruption, we lose.
That is absolutely true.
Lindsay, thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. It was
so
a
much.
pleasure. And we'll see you next week on Norwich Confidential.